Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, a place where I interview tech leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, futurists, technologists, thought leaders, and even the occasional celebrity about how they are leveraging technology to transform their business. And today, I want to take you on a trip to Stockholm in Sweden, because today's guest, alongside his co-founder, were some of the first people to introduce premium podcast subscriptions when they first launched Acast, the global podcasting platform. But they did go on to abandon this model after realising that consumers, for the most part, get a bad deal from subscriptions. So they believe that the current mass subscription model was unsustainable, especially when you look around and you see Netflix lost a further 1 million subscribers this year. And with inflation going through the roof and troubles ahead, the worst is arguably yet to come for subscription models. So given these developments, subscription-dependent sectors are crying out for an alternative or more options. But what is that alternative? What does it look like? Well, today's guest, Måns Ulvestam, sold his shares in Acast to launch a new book, audio and news platform called Sesamy, which allows users to buy only what they need, when they need it, and access it on a device or app through single purchases. No need for subscriptions, but just a way to allow them to access and own digital content. Now, this has already rolled out in Sweden and Denmark, and have had significant expansion plans in place, and have been featured heavily in the media over here in the UK. I think, for example, they featured in the Observer newspaper recently. So I want to find out more about this and the story behind the company and what their grand vision is. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Nextiva, helping you engage with your customers and your team in a single app. Now, you might recall Nextiva from episode 1875, where I had a great conversation with Thomas Gorney, Nextiva's co-founder and CEO. Now, Thomas shared how he came to America as a Polish immigrant and college dropout who didn't speak a word of English. But Gorney soon built several market-defining companies before starting Nextiva. And Nextiva brings customer and team conversations into a single screen. So with Nextiva, you'll call, text, chat, video meet, and more. But the really special thing is you'll see the entire conversation history all in a single thread. So now, when a customer contacts you, you'll know their whole story. You can say the right thing right now. So get one app to manage your customer and team conversations by simply visiting nextiva.com/techtalkdaily. So with the scene perfectly set, I'm going to ask you to buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm about to beam your ears all the way to Stockholm in Sweden to speak with Måns about all this, and also by how using their own unique SmartID software, Sesamy can ensure a single purchase option doesn't have to cannibalize existing subscription income. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm the CEO of Sesamy. Sesamy is a company that provides single purchase of digital content as opposed to subscriptions of digital content. But I've been an entrepreneur in the digital industry since 1996. Founded two of the world's largest and most awarded interactive agencies. I've also founded Acast, the world's largest podcasting company. Like I said, now 100% Sesamy for the last 2-3 years.
Fantastic. You've been on an incredible journey there, and everyone will know Acast, of course. And I'd love to take you back before all this, before Acast, before 1996. Can you remember the moment that maybe lit a spark in you for technology and digital content, etc., and ultimately what put you on the path that you're on right now? Or as they say in those Hollywood movies, what's your origin story?
All right. I think it was the first time I discovered the internet, actually. This must have been back in 1992. Me and my friends went to the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, which was basically the only place that had an internet connection back then. And you could use their computers and then connect to other universities and log on to their file service and download stuff. You could download games, basic stuff, and then you put those on your floppy disks, and then you went home to your little computer, and it felt amazing that you had actually done something on the other side of the world through the internet. So that at that moment, I understood that this is world changing, and it's something that we've never seen before. I don't know if I decided back then that this is what I'm going to do for a living, but it's certainly when I discovered the power of the internet.
Wow, you've been on an incredible journey. You discovered the power of the internet there, and then obviously that led to podcast and Acast. What got you interested in podcasts from the beginning?
I think me and Karl, who co-founded Acast, we had friends who were podcasters, and they kept talking about their podcasts, and we started getting interested. How many listeners do you have? Do you make any money from this? And some of them had quite large followings back then. So one guy that we knew, he had 100,000 listeners per episode, and he was making zero money. And I said, this is insane. If this was a radio show or a TV show with 100,000 viewings, then you would be making a lot of money. So we started digging into what was wrong with podcasting. And it turned out that a few things were wrong. And so we decided to set out and fix those things, basically. Starting with the monetization. Back then, the only way to monetize a podcast was through a host read, a sponsorship. It's, as you know, it's static, it's burnt into the file, and you only get paid once. So we said, well, that's not how advertisers would want it. They would want to target messaging at different target audiences at different times, change messaging over time, of course. So we built dynamic advertising for podcasting, where the ad gets burned into the file on the fly. So that was the big invention for Acast. And obviously, as you dig deeper into podcasting back then, you saw that all the numbers were wrong, the way that people measured and the way they monetized the podcast, everything was wrong. So we basically set out to build a new ecosystem for podcasting from the commercial side. And I'm proud to say that what we built back then, 2013, 2014, is what podcasting is today. So all of the assumptions back then were correct, which of course led to the success of Acast.
And when I've looked at this story behind Acast, it seems like you guys were so far ahead of your time. I mean, now everything you just mentioned is commonplace. And I say commonplace, there's a lot of companies only just waking up to it. I had a call with LinkedIn recently, or just starting to dip their toes in that water. And this was something you were doing, a decade ago. And of course, this path would lead you to what you're doing now with Sesamy, which is a platform that helps users escape that subscription trap by only paying for the content that they want rather than that monthly figure. So can you tell me more about the story behind that company and the problems that you set out to solve with this technology?
Yeah, I mean, me, Karl, and Markus, who was the tech guy behind Acast, we left the company 3-4 years ago and set out to build Sesamy instead. The reason for it is that we saw that the internet basically took a wrong turn 10 years ago. Everything was put behind a paywall. So everything was monetized through subscriptions, TV, books, newspapers, everything was inaccessible to you unless you were a subscriber. And we said that this is not sustainable. It cannot be the only way to monetize content. What about the old way where you just want this piece of content, you pay for that and you own it, and then you consume it, whichever way you want to. So we said we've reached peak subscription. We said that it's not possible for people to afford all of these subscriptions in the long run. I mean, subscriptions are great if you're using it every day. So if you're reading a paper every day, it's obviously you should have a subscription. once in a while, quite often actually, you get sent an article, for instance, that you would like to read, but instead you get a paywall in your face. So that's what Sesamy sets out to fix. And if you look at, IRL, no one would accept subscription to be the only monetization vehicle. So if you and I went into Tesco's and you bought something, I didn't buy anything, and when we go out, I have to split the bill with you. That's how subscription services work, and not sustainable.
You hit you made a great comment there that it's not sustainable, because I think with inflation going through the roof right now, uncertainty around the globe, and so many troubles ahead, do you think the worst is arguably yet to come for subscription models? Because if we zoom out here, everyone's looking at their bills and thinking, how can I cut back here so to better afford heating and food, etc.? So, and the first thing you look at when you look at that bill is, oh no, I didn't realize I had this many subscriptions. I've got, I don't know, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Netflix, and that list goes on and on. So do you think there is harsh times ahead for subscription models?
Yes, I mean, it is. And now we will look like Nostradamus because our business model, but we were also obviously helped now by the downturn in the economy, like you said. Yeah. And people look over their bills and they can't afford it. So what happens is that if you look at the data, 50% of all subscriptions are never used. And that means that half of the money in the digital content ecosystem shouldn't be there. I mean, in other walks of life, it's illegal to charge someone if you don't deliver the service, but not so for subscriptions. So when people realize that maybe I don't need all of these subscriptions, obviously they will cancel them as a way to save money. And it's already happening. I mean, Netflix lost 1 million subscribers in the second quarter this year, and I'm sure people are checking their economy. So yes, the worst is yet to come, obviously.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. And when I was doing a bit of research, I also read that by using your own unique SmartID software, that you can ensure a single purchase option doesn't end up cannibalizing existing subscription income. So can you just walk me through how it all works and just help listeners understand how it might compare with, I don't know, their current Audible subscription, for example?
Yeah, I don't think that's applicable to the Audible, even though we sell audiobooks as well. But it's very applicable to our solution for single purchase news articles. So, I mean, it's been tried before, putting a single purchase button on articles, but it's never used and worked. And the reason for this is that the newspapers have been experimenting, with their models. What should it be priced at? Do you give them 1 month for free to get them hooked? And now they've reached, peak subscription with that. Most subscription services are not growing anymore when it comes to news. So they need an incremental revenue stream, and single purchase is obviously the solution. But like I said, you cannot just put the button there, because that will cannibalize the existing subscription revenue. So you need to put the button on the traffic that will not cannibalize it. You need to price it at the correct price point, and you have to do a few tricks around it so that it's actually incremental revenue and not just single revenue, if you know what I mean. So that's what the SmartID does. It's a software that aggregates data, and then using machine learning technology, we can do recommendation prediction on price points, etc.
And I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you received from your community? Do you get to hear any stories?
Yeah, I mean, people seem to love our solution, especially when it comes to the single purchase articles. That's what people have been looking for. I'm sure all the listeners can relate to the fact that they would like to read some articles and they don't, because they simply cannot get past the paywall, and it's no way they would be a subscriber. So that part of our business model has received a lot of great feedback. so far. I mean, we just launched the articles about a month ago, but we've received some press around it and gotten great feedback so far. And it's working as well, so that's great.
Fantastic. And is there anything that you can share around any possible expansion plans and when users can expect it in their region? Because we will have people listening all over the world, and it's not available everywhere yet, right?
No, it's not available everywhere. I mean, we are live with books and podcasts in Sweden and Denmark. We also have an English version of our online store, but it's not complete with all the titles you would expect yet. The news articles just launched a month ago, so it's early days, but I think we like to see this as a global company from the start, and I'm sure we will expand quite rapidly. For instance, when we did Acast, we expanded to the UK after 1 year, and then the US 1 year after that, and then Australia the same year. So hopefully we can keep the same tempo with this thing.
And of course, we're talking today at that time of the year where every futurist and technologist and so-called self-proclaimed expert is predicting what's going to wait for us in 2023. So if I were to ask you to look in your virtual crystal ball, can you tell me how you see a post-subscription future evolving, or what you think might happen?
I don't think I see a future completely without subscriptions, but I think I see a future where a single purchase is an alternative to subscription, and that's a better future than what we have now. So, and in fact, it's the thing that made us start Sesamy. If we succeed, then people will be able to read different points of view than they would normally do, and therefore it will become a better world. So that's sort of the end goal for Sesamy, to open up the internet, to bring back open. In terms of your question there, what is installed for 2023? I have no idea. I would like to be surprised.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. And I love what you said there about it's not, well, I think we need to move away from binary thinking and everything being, is it subscription? Is it not subscription? The fact is just giving people choices, giving them options. There's room for both solutions to exist out there. And what about you, though? What's next for you in 2023? Is there anything you can share about what you're focusing on and what might excite you about the road ahead?
Yeah, I think we have a very clear focus for 2023, and that's to implement a single purchase article solution on as many newspapers and magazines as possible. I mean, it's always nice to have a very clear goal, and our goal is very clear. So that's what's in store for us.
Excellent. And a question I always like to ask at the end of every podcast. We started talking about your origin story, the journey you've been on. When you reflect on your career, is there a funny or interesting story that has happened? Because you've experienced so much from the very beginning of the internet, the rise of podcasts, and now what you're doing with digital content. Is there any interesting or funny stories you can share?
I can share a cautionary tale if you want me to.
Sure.
It's back a couple of years after we started Acast, we were in the Microsoft acceleration program and working there to sort of get closer to them. And we did some nice collaborations with them. And eventually I got to meet Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. And it was a very well-prepared meeting, and you know, when you meet someone like that, it's, you know, you have minutes and you have to be very clear on what your asks are, and etc. So I explained Acast to him, and then asked to see someone from Bing, their search engine, because I had an idea that if someone searched using Bing, the result would for a podcast, the result would be an embedded player so you could listen and stay on the search engine, which will be good for Microsoft, but also obviously very good for Acast. And he liked that idea, so he said, sure, and set it up. And when a guy like that sets something up, it happens really, really fast. So the next day I met the CEO of Bing and explained it, and he said, sure, send over the software and we'll take a look at it, the code for the embed player. So we did, and then it stopped happening fast, and then it took a long time, and then after a week I thought, okay, something is wrong. And then eventually they came back and said, look, we're not going to work with you. Your embed player does not work with Internet Explorer. So you cannot send something to Microsoft that you haven't checked works with the latest version of Internet Explorer, which entirely our fault, obviously, for not double checking and triple checking that. But there you go. Assumption is the mother of all fuck ups.
And fast forward to present day, and Acast is still going strong. But where's Internet Explorer?
Yeah, it's called Edge now. I'm sure it's doing well. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And for anybody listening that would like to find out more information about everything that we talked about today, and maybe explore the different models, what content's available, and also keeping up to speed with when it might be coming to their area, what's the best starting point for everything?
I think if you look up Sesamy.com or go to our LinkedIn page, I'm sure we keep that quite updated.
Excellent. Well, I'll have that link to the show notes so people can find it nice and easily. So much I loved about your story, from your origin story there, the birth of the internet and creating premium podcast subscriptions. Like you said, it's commonplace now, but you were almost Nostradamus then, and it feels like you're Nostradamus now. So maybe you need to, I don't know, put a bet on the football this weekend or something, because you seem to have a golden touch. But thanks for sharing your story with me today.
Thank you, Neil. Nice to be here.
What a great idea. And today's guest seems to have the Midas touch when it comes to predicting future trends and acting upon them. And it's almost like you can see things that are going to happen before they do. So I'm very interested to see what happens with Sesamy. I think we can expect quite a rapid expansion plan on that. So it's something that I'm going to be following closely here in the UK. But what's your opinion on that? And everything we've discussed today about subscriptions, the subscription economy. For many years, repeatable income via subscription models seemed to be the big trend that businesses were chasing. But now they've fallen on hard times. Do we need more alternatives, more options? Is there room for both of these worlds to exist alongside each other? These are just a few of the questions off the top of my head. You've heard from me, you've heard from today's guest, but what are your opinions? And will you be checking this platform out? As always, let me know. techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, just at Neil C. Hughes. Nice and easy to find. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 2,200 podcast interviews. More than enough to keep you out of trouble for the weekend. But hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. Please join me again tomorrow. But thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.